Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first Sharp Cloud Changemaker session. My name is Rebecca. I will be joined shortly by Jorge, Antu, and Dinah. We want this to be an interactive session, so feel free to leave any questions that you have in the Q&A feature. It looks like we're still waiting on a few more people to join, so hang tight and we'll just get started in a minute. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Today's session will be recorded so that those that couldn't make it to the session will be able to watch later. If you have any questions throughout the session, please drop them into the Q&A feature and our team will make sure that you get an answer. I'm going to quickly introduce our team on the webinar today. Guys, if whenever I say your names, if you just want to give everyone a wave. Our instructor and primary expert for today is Jorge Antonetti. We're also being joined by Dinah Turner as a co-host. We're so lucky to have this team, and I know that they're all really excited to speak with you today. Jorge, would you mind starting off with what road mapping is and what we're going to be discussing today during the session?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Jorge Antonetti here, your road mapping solutions consultant, and let's jump into the content today. So what you'll be able to take away, what we will learn today, of course, our target is to provide you the content and means, right, to communicate road mapping improvements needed within your org. And how we'll do that is by giving you the leverage to answer the following questions that we see on the right. Right, so you'll learn the difference between roadmap and road mapping, road maps and road mapping. How does traditional road mapping maybe differ from modern road mapping? What are some of the elements of a full value road mapping practice? What can you do to improve those elements? What might be the current state of those elements within your org or team, right? And maybe determine whether or not if you need to reset your road mapping practices or maybe just improve some specific areas or tactics that need to get over the line. So first we start with why road mapping. But first, of course, the most important thing that we want to do is make sure that we understand these similar but very distinct concepts, right, in road mapping and road maps. So what we want to start with first is road mapping, right? And the main takeaway here is that it is a collection of strategic planning and alignment processes that provide a framework to enable the development and implementation of a strategic plan, right? And then, of course, what a roadmap is just a visual representation of that plan, right? Its purpose is just to provide a visual representation of a strategic plan.
So, Jorge, do you want to explain to us a little bit the difference between road mapping and roadmaps? Because aren't roadmaps just plans?
Yes, usually. And that is a great question. And one of the key concepts we want everyone to take away today, right? Road mapping, as we see it, right, is really a collection of strategic planning and alignment processes, right? And what these do is provide a framework to enable the development and implementation of a strategic plan versus, what we're familiar with is the artifact, right? The artifacts of that process, which is a road map. And a road map, the only purpose is to provide a visual representation of strategic plan. So although very similar concepts, they are distinct. Again, one being the process in which we develop and implement our strategic plan, and the roadmap just being the visual representation of that strategic plan.
Okay, so in some organizations then, they might have road maps, but they don't necessarily do all the things to do with road mapping. Could you talk us through the benefits of road mapping versus just having road maps?
I would love to. Of course, what road mapping does for us is essentially aligns everyone towards a common goal, right? We're able to see our long-term goals really broken down into manageable steps to allow better focus, right? Whereas a road map, in this example, right, it just allows us to track the progress that we're making towards those long-term goals and allow us to make adjustments as well very quickly, right? And again, provides a clear representation or a plan or project that we have to reach our goal. So again, just a communication tool, really. Think of a roadmap and road mapping, that alignment piece for that communication.
So I guess really it's really about engaging everybody in the journey of describing what that roadmap process is, that road mapping process to create a roadmap, which gives you that artifact to hang everything on. So can you just tell me, who would you normally involve in that road mapping process?
So in the road mapping process, you normally want to involve your top management, right? And really just senior management really wants to be involved in this, of course, because why? You're setting the vision, right? This is a really a top-down approach first in road mapping. You want to be able to make sure that where you're going to go, right, is aligned, and the assumptions on how to get there are aligned, right? Before then disseminating that to the rest of your company, so they can then at least tell you how to build the roadmap or what they can do to reach that vision, right?
So I've seen lots of different road mapping approaches and things that people do. I've seen post-it notes on walls. I've seen PowerPoints of drawings of what we're going to get to. Jorge, could you talk to us a little bit more about what is digital road mapping?
Absolutely. So what digital road mapping is just a modern approach that leverages digital tools and technologies to enhance our road mapping processes, right? And what these digital tools and technologies do is enable collaboration, right? They make data sharing easier, and of course, in turn, they allow easier data-driven decisions to be made as well. And the combination of these three things allows us to reap the benefits that we see on the right here. So improved stakeholder alignment, right? Increased transparency and accountability, right? And of course, that allows us to then have an improved decision-making and resource allocation process, and that enables us to get things to market faster.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So that's really interesting that digital road mapping gives you all that capability. So does that just mean that this is like PowerPoints, this is Excel, spreadsheets? Is that a digital roadmap?
No, not necessarily, right? Although they are electronic, right, forms of maybe building a roadmap, they are not digital road mapping as we are explaining it here. And that is because, of course, those tools don't allow you to enhance your road mapping process, right? It's still a part of that traditional approach, maybe creating static roadmaps, where a road mapping tool, right, is going to allow you to maybe create something that's more dynamic, easily updated. And of course, with these tools, right, with the rises and advancements in technology, right, businesses have increased the reliance on these digital roadmaps. And we see a number of drivers really driving this increase in reliance, right? Again, we talked about the advancements in technology, making it better and easier for people to maybe work across regions and countries. Right? We've seen COVID-19 really disrupt the way of working that we were used to, allowing us to see the benefits of working from home, right? And that, of course, has led to some shifting user expectations as we've had a younger demographic who's really have grown up in this digital age, come accustomed, right, to using these tools and working in this hybrid workforce that we're in now. And that, of course, is then driving the need for these tools as technology continues to advance.
Great. Okay, so that's a really interesting introduction to digital road mapping and why that gives you more really the flexibility brought through the digital solution and the allowing you to connect people, things and information in different ways. Can you tell us a little bit more about the key elements of road mapping that really are going to help organizations out there get started?
Absolutely. So again, right, we want to see all 5 of these elements realized within an organization for them to reap the benefits of road mapping and even digital road mapping at that. So of course, we start with vision, right? And really, vision allows us to kind of set our final destination, right? And why are we going there? So what future state will we reach by, maybe setting a strategic plan, right? Then we have depth of alignment. So really outlining who we have to work with to get there, and who then has the final say on the plan that we set to get there. And then, of course, once we have our stakeholders in place, we then move into planning. So we ask things like, what constitutes a roadmap item? How do we validate what needs to be added to our roadmap? And then what constraints, right, or what internal forces are we really looking at to lead our prioritization, right, of those items? Then, once we've planned, right, we have our items, we understand what we're going to be doing, we then get into execution, right? So what details do we include when we are detailing our roadmap and executing and implementing these things that we've set? And then how do we handle updates of the roadmap as well, right? Because as time changes, passes, right, things can go awry, right? So we need to make updates. And then, of course, finally, how then are we integrating that data into our roadmap as well? So if updates are made or maybe something has changed and we need to validate it, how are we ensuring that the data that we have is actually correct and the items that we have on our roadmap are impacting the vision as expected due to those changes?
So brilliant, Jorge. That's an interesting overview. Should we dig into each one of those a little bit more? Let's start with vision.
Absolutely. Let's begin. So a clear vision allows us to determine what items are going to be placed on our roadmap, right? So if we're able to see clearly where we're going to be headed in the future, so for example, a Sharp Cloud International Airport by 2035, right? That allows us to know exactly what we're going to be placing on our roadmap. So in this instance, we have a clear vision. So we know that we're going to be placing maybe a airport terminal and Airbuses, planes on our product roadmap or on our roadmap. We're going to maybe know the features as well. So reclining seats, maybe a self-serving kiosk in the terminal. Right, we'll have our business goals, so maybe revenue, profit, customer goals, and long-term outlooks as well. And then, right, the real main takeaway here is that value road mapping organizations strive to include all of these items on their roadmap because they allow us to clarify our strategic direction.
Right, so that's great. So vision is where we want to get to. Obviously, we have to define our B for our A to B, and that could be infrastructure, manufacturing, aerospace, whatever those things are. And we have to move from A to B. Do you want to just dig in a little bit more, Jorge, into how the roadmap does that?
Absolutely. So again, we have to remember that the roadmap is just our visual representation of our strategy, right? It's the path to get to our vision. So here we have in this example, right, we have our vision of, Sharp Cloud International reaching over 1 million international flights. And then we move into setting our org strategy. And we see the environment that our org strategy is set into. So we have external and internal forces, right, that constantly nudge and force us to maybe change direction, maybe slightly, as we reach this vision. And of course, these internal and external forces also set our market environment and maybe the objectives and goals that we have as well, right? And then those are, of course, in line, going to determine the decisions that we need to make, right, to reach those goals and continue on our org strategy. So again, the roadmap is there to make sure that we get to, right, that visual representation of getting to that international flight, right, of over 1 million in 2035. So again, the roadmap shows what will be built, right, why it will be built, and how we will deal with uncertainty as time passes.
Okay, so that's a great way of explaining how all those forces sort of pressure our strategy and how we explain a roadmap. So what's next?
So what's next? Now that we understand where we're going and why, right, and how we'll deal with uncertainty, we then need to figure out, of course, who is coming along with us. Basically, who's going to help us establish this plan and roadmap that we need. So we move to depth of alignment, right? And really what this is just understanding who is responsible, who is involved, and who is the ultimate owner of the roadmap or roadmaps that we will have, and how well do we achieve alignment between these groups, right? So think about our technology, stacks, our people, right, and time, and of course the how we align across all of those things.
So we've picked out our A to B, we've set out our strategy, and we've also looked in here in terms of depth of alignment. We've thought about who we want to get involved, what information we need to bring in, the extent of the organizational involvement that we have to look at, the depth and the breadth of the roadmap and what's involved. So in terms of planning and thinking about the actual what we do now as well as why we do it, how do we move into that planning phase?
So what we do next, of course, is then prioritize our roadmap items. Now that we understand who's on the right, who's going to be involved, right, who's responsible, and who's the ultimate owner, right, and we understand thanks to our vision what roadmap items are going to be on the roadmap, we can then begin to prioritize them, right? So we see the vision, right? That vision helps validate the roadmap items that we're going to see, and we then can look at what external factors are going to be influencing our internal factors, so those things that we use to prioritize our actions on the roadmap. And of course, once relevancy is decided, right, so once we understand what factors are going to be relevant to us for prioritization, a standard approach is probably best, right, to improve this planning element that we have here. Essentially, what you need to do across your teams is make sure that everyone is prioritizing on the same internal factor that we see, constraint. Is it budget that you're focused on? Is it time, maybe, or capability, dependencies, right? Once that's set, standardize it across. And things you want to avoid, of course, things like opinions, maybe setting priority, right? Short-term value. Maybe, we want to increase shareholder value in next quarter. Those aren't things that are going to help your road mapping practice at all, because it would be too short-sighted. So again, full value road mapping is a combination, right, of their vision, the resulting items on that roadmap, and relevant factors to their situation to create a standardized approach, right, for prioritization.
Great. Okay. So we know what we're doing. We know the plan, really our vision, our items that we put on the roadmap. So I guess the next stage is really making that happen.
Absolutely. This is where we move into execution, right? And what we do in this element really is detail, right, the roadmap items that we've now placed, right, and prioritized, and of course, how we update them. And just to talk to this briefly, right, what you want to be sure that you can do in your organization, right, is ensure there's a systematic process embedded right within your teams to make updates easy for them, right? A roadmap has no value once an update has been made and no one knows about it, for example. So we want to make sure that roadmap items can be updated as needed, but can also be reviewed in a systematic way.
So how often might you expect your roadmap to be updated? Is it like a continuous thing when people are doing their actions or detailing more research or those kind of things? Is it periodic? Does it have a cadence? How might it work?
So that really depends, of course, on the nature of your organization or your team. My, of course, personal opinion here is that it should be done continuously. So that allows, but continuously in a systematic way. So essentially proactive changes, right? Not reactive changes, but proactive changes that allow, of course, review if needed to say, okay, you changed this, maybe we didn't need to change it. But of course, that change is at least first accepted and then reviewed. So I would say, again, the cadence really just depends on your org size and what your team likes, how structured they want to be, really.
I guess, and then I suppose with us looking at digital road mapping, that helps as well because you can all work wherever you are around one set of information. So everything could be up to date immediately when it was needed, and people could make sure that that informs their best decision. So I guess that leads us on to also the final element, Jorge, which is data.
Absolutely, it does, right? So data, right, really this feeds into that execution element, of course, because data is going to determine how, right, or maybe contextualize your updates, right? So again, what data is just a process in which we verify our roadmap items are going to impact the vision objectives that we've set, and as we expect them to. So really, we could call this section validation as well, if you'd like. And again, what we're here to do is just make sure that, hey, we've set this goal, or we've set this action to reach this goal. As time has passed, will this still help us reach this goal? So for example, if you want to hit 1 million flights, right, at Sharp Cloud International, and suddenly the market environment has changed, no one's flying anymore, maybe we have to change that objective. Maybe we have to change our action slightly to get there. So it's this that we want to consider the most, really. I think this might be the best thing, is what people really miss is the validation of the roadmap after it's created, right? The strategic plan after it's been set.
So yes, I guess it has to be dynamic, using the right data that's pertinent at the right time to support that decision-making process. I think that's been really useful. So Jorge, would you talk us through a little bit more about why digital road mapping actually helps in this case?
Absolutely right. We'll see this come full circle now, because what digital road mapping enables us to do is just manage the complexity of the road mapping process a little bit easier, right? And really, it's through the people that we have, right, our surrounding processes, and the tools that our teams use in those processes, that decisions are made, right? So we see that business complexity, right, that uncertainty as the market environment develops and internal factors fluctuate, right? We then have so let's say someone that takes in data from the market, so to say, and we find out we've lost resources, for example, right, for a certain project. Where are they importing that? Where are they presenting that information, right? You want it to be in the same tool that they're going to then use to align this update, right, with their other stakeholders. So you want that to be able to, you don't want to have to duplicate effort, right, to show one thing. So let's say that information comes in, they have that alignment meeting with maybe their first level stakeholders, and then a decision needs to be made, but can't be made at that level. So then they use the same tool to then maybe present to executive management to finally make that decision, right? And then that, of course, determines our time to decision. So the time it takes to do all of that in a tool that, one central tool, essentially, eliminates the need for duplicate steps of maybe using Excel, right? And then going to PowerPoint. And then after that alignment, updating the PowerPoint for executive decision, right? It's all in one place. So again, that's just the main takeaway there. The time it takes for us to make decisions just impacts our ability to be agile and competitive.
I guess it's not just the time it takes to make those decisions, it's the accuracy of those decisions as well. So it's, have you got the right information? All that work that you've done in terms of setting up your vision, your roadmap, your data, and your execution, you're getting the right people involved. It means that you actually have the right data, that you're making the right calls on at the right time, and you're not missing things. You're not missing information or making an assumption. So all of that, I guess, gives you this holistic picture. Do you want to just tell us a little bit more?
Yes. So where this faster decision making comes from, right, is the fact that digital road mapping tools allow us to be dynamic, right? Allow real-time updates to be shared and seen across your stakeholders. We can then have the correct access. I'll restart it again. Hold on. You asked your question. Yes, we see that faster decisions really come from granting access to the correct stakeholders, right? So we can understand our assumptions and then the impacts that those assumptions will then have on our roadmap targets. So, right, our traditional way of road mapping, right, we have static roadmaps before. Won't go through them all, but we all know that once an update was made, the roadmap that we maybe shared beforehand, it was useless. So what digital road mapping allows us to do is have dynamic roadmaps that have infinite uses with sliceable views, hopefully, right? So then stakeholder value actually increases with change because they're able to see these changes as they're made in real time and then make decisions on their work that might be needed. And of course, updates and communication can be done in one fell swoop, right? And there's then again no need to maybe update connecting information because it's there already and connected. So if we change a dependency, for example, on a project, right, we can see that other project that's affected be changed automatically, right, without need for us to make any more input into that.
Great. Okay. So that's given us a really good grounding in understanding what road mapping is and what digital road mapping is, and that the elements that you tie together and how beneficial digital road mapping can be. So over to Antu now. If Antu, you could give us a walkthrough of how you might build a digital roadmap, I think that would be really great to understand what a good one would look like for the sort of people that we've got on this call today.
So yeah, Jorge's done a great job outlining some of the key benefits that you should be able to achieve from digital road mapping, as well as a lot of the elements that are key to that. And that was really interesting, as Jorge said, about the stakeholders being maybe one of the biggest challenges. Because the landscape for road mapping is complex. I've tried to lay it out here on a single screen, but anyone who's involved in road mapping knows it is a juggling act with many, many dimensions. But you can usefully sort of think in terms of certain terminology like why, what, and how. And maybe this will just help to sort of bring together some of those pieces that have been described so far. So if you have an effective road mapping process underpinning or creating a valuable roadmap, that can provide the benefits around communication, alignment, and so on. So let's just take a step through some of these elements and just give ourselves a chance to reflect on, where our opportunities are, maybe where some of our particular challenges are. So obviously it is all about understanding what you're trying to achieve. So as was outlined, vision is key. Where are we today? Where do we want to get to? As we'll come back to, that's not necessarily a smooth ride. There are lots of things that are changing on the way to that vision. But setting our vision and understanding why we're trying to operate in a particular way, and having that top level sort of reason for everybody to align behind is important. From having a good vision, we can obviously set our goals. Hopefully they'll be all green rather than a mixture of red, amber, green. But the reality is our goals will be impacted by everything else that's in and around our attempt to roadmap effectively. But having sort of set our goals, we need to be obviously both aligning with and using the inputs from our internal stakeholder community and peers. So whether it be, product teams, engineers, senior execs, I think something that probably has been realized more and more recently, and I'm sure we all would nod at this, is that a roadmap is not the preserve of one person. It's not somebody's role to just go, da-da, here's the roadmap. It comes from the involvements, the interactions, and the alignment across these teams. Same is true with external stakeholders. We need to be cognizant of what their requirements are, what we're trying to achieve, and hopefully be aligned with their direction of travel, both from a senior level and obviously from a customer and supplier perspective. Then within the actual frame of our roadmap, what are we trying to make sure we're holding on to? Because in a way, we'll see this as a bit of a diagonal, but you can think of it as often a pillar that we start with that gets a bit wobbly because global trends and market drivers, COVID-19 was mentioned, various other ones, can try and knock us away from achieving our vision, or they can bring through new initiatives, new reasons why we need to respond differently. So even though we may have set our target in terms of what we're going to deliver from a product or service perspective, we need to be obviously tracking those market changes and drivers if we're going to keep consistent and be able to achieve our goals and move towards our vision. Obviously, we're not, I guess nobody is really, resource rich in terms of having everything that they might want at their disposal in the quantities that they might desire. It's about scarce resources. It's about making the most of those, understanding how they align through to deliver the value of your products and services, and how that needs to be flexed to reflect those trends and drivers. But effective road mapping should provide that perspective. And I think, the question that Eva asked on the chat, I was going to respond to it because I think, yeah, absolutely. The data is the data, but it's about how can you use it to allow bottom up or top down, alignment and indicators of where you should focus or where you should change. Perhaps, this view might be suggesting that actually, because we're only relying on this resource and it's going to be available in time, maybe we could, bring this product forward. So the roadmap should provide opportunities for the benefits such as time to market by giving transparency and accountability across this landscape, hopefully making decisions more connected and involving more people and stakeholders to both draw upon the roadmap, but also inform it. It's not a one-way street in terms of just, here's the roadmap, take it or leave it. Very much it's about that engagement that Jorge is talking about, getting people interacting with it and leaving their knowledge as part of it so that those decisions become smarter and better. So hopefully this helps just to lay out some of those elements. Happy to take any questions. Otherwise, I'll pass back to Jorge.
So thank you to Antu and thank you to Jorge for talking us all through the digital road mapping process and the broader road mapping process. Obviously, there's a lot more help and resources on this, and we have more road mapping webinars coming up where we dig deeper into each of these elements. So if we just have a look at the next slide, that will tell us some of those parts that you can get involved with.
Absolutely.
So you can, of course, sign up to Sharp Cloud for free on our website, and that will allow you to start playing with Sharp Cloud if you wanted to try that for your digital road mapping solutions. You can start your learning journey with us on our free webinars. These run regularly each month, and you can just access those through our website and find the date that works for you. Our marketplace solutions include road mapping as a service, which sort of brings in a lot of a richer experience around the things that we've learned when we've been working with clients on road mapping for their complex solutions. And that allows you to connect to our consulting teams and wider delivery partners, so it can help you get to a roadmap, a digital roadmap sooner. You can also explore our story of stories, which gives more specific examples of digital roadmaps and also adjacent supporting areas to those. So there are things that you might want to look at around things like doing your SWOT analysis, your vision workshop. How do you work with stakeholders? Those are adjacent to managing your roadmap, which gives you a bit road mapping and more, which is what we want to do to help you. And also you can start a maturity assessment through our website, which will give you access to understand where your road mapping situation is today, your strategy, and what you need to do to improve. All of these things are free and available for you to access. Please also join us at our future road mapping webinars. We have one each month currently. And if you register with us and look through the website and follow also our LinkedIn pages, you'll get the most up-to-date information.
All right, absolutely. So again, right, we covered today the differences between a roadmap and road mapping, right? Strategic alignment processes that set the roadmap as road mapping, right? And the visual representation just being a roadmap, right? We talked about the traditional approach of road mapping and the new digital road mapping approach that businesses are taking now. We then went through the 5 elements of full value road mapping, right? Looking at vision, depth of alignment, so on. We then talked about what we can do to improve those elements. So again, standardizing our prioritization, making sure that data can be integrated into our roadmap very easily, right? Updates are able to be made very easily. We then looked at maybe what is the current state of required elements within your organization. So we covered what are the elements of a roadmap with Antu, right? Kind of showing us what's needed for a digital roadmap. And then, of course, you have the maturity assessment to really dive deep into what areas you really do need improvement on. And of course, at the end of that assessment, you then get the recommendation of, do I need to reset my road mapping practice, or maybe just improve those areas that are needed. So we hope that you've been able to take away all of these aspects. And again, make sure that you follow up with the roadmap maturity assessment, and even maybe check out Sharp Cloud as a tool to really understand what you might be missing in your digital landscape, right, for road mapping.
All right. Thank you so much for everyone who joined us today, as well as Antu, Dinah, and Jorge for your time and your expertise. Our next webinar on road mapping is scheduled for April 26th. We'll be sending more information about that, but feel free to look on our website and follow us on LinkedIn and on Twitter to get more information on the session. Again, thank you so much. And we hope everybody has a great day.